Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to continue my segments on analysing the Chaos Space Marine Codex. Now today I'm sort of finishing the fast attacks, I think, by talking about the Chaos Spawn. Oh, Chaos Spawn. Interesting unit to say the least in terms of history. I think it's universally at some point been known as one of the worst units in both 40k and fantasy at points. I think at one point it was considered a pretty good unit, now it's came out pretty meh. I think there's also been worse units than the Chaos Spawn, but it's definitely been in the top 5 worst units, if that's an oxymoron, top worst 5. Yep, you get what I mean, it was universally considered pretty bad before. Now it's kind of, interesting to say the least, so I'll talk about that in a bit more detail on some of its ideas. So how this works, I'm going to speak about the stats in the book, sort of stuff there, war gear options if possible, abilities that can apply to the unit. I'm then going to talk about the loadout and role suggestions of the unit and possibly how to play them, legion traits if applicable, psychic abilities that are useful, and stratagem recommendations as well. So with that, well, let's have a look at the Chaos Spawn. So Chaos Spawn is a fast unit. It's movement 7, which is quite interesting. Not too bad, but faster than some units. Weapon skill 4+, which doesn't make it as reliable as I'd want it to be, only hitting 50% of times. Ballistic skill none, but then again, it's not getting ranged weapons, so okie dokie. Strength and toughness 5, so a bit stronger and tougher means it's got a bit more harder hitting and durability, which is handy. 4 wounds, which is quite handy because it means things that do automatically 3 damage, like thunder hammers, means that 2 swings are half to connect to kill 1 spawn, which is probably more helpful than you think. D6 attacks, which means it's not going to be reliable in terms of how many attacks it's going to get. I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. Leadership 9, now you can take these into a unit, I believe, of 5, which means you should only ever, can you run? I think you can run on a 6 if you kill 4 of them. Yeah, so if you take a unit 5, 1 might go, I've had enough of this, if you kill 4 of them and then it rolls a 6. So fairly reliable to stay in leadership, unless psychic shenanigans. And a 5+ save, which is a problem. Means dedicated firepower is pretty much going to grant you no save back. So yeah, in terms of war gear, they've only got one thing, hideous mutations. This is a melee weapon, strength user, so we're going to be strength 5, which is not bad, -2 AP, which I'm a big fan of, and 2 damage, which is also very handy. They have ability, they have fearsome, so enemy units within 1 inch of any Chaos Spawn must subtract 1 from their leadership. And they also have mutated beyond reason, and this is sort of their primary rule. When a unit of Chaos Spawn, makes close combat attacks, roll a d3 and consult the table below. Razor Claws, this hideous mutation, the hideous mutation all Chaos Spawns in the unit have an AP of -3 until the end of the fight phase. So yeah, -4 AP, not bad. Situational, depending on the unit that you're fighting. Grasping Pseudopods, yep. Each Chaos Spawn in the unit adds 2 to its attack characteristic until the end of the fight phase. Very, very helpful. I find more attacks possibly my preference here. And Toxic Hemorrhage. You can reroll failed wound rolls for this unit until the end of the fight phase. Rerolling wounds, especially I think if you're against tougher targets, things that are possibly, you know, toughness 5, especially toughness 6, rerolling those wounds are probably more vital than the extra attacks. Maybe the -4 AP might help, but the rerolling wounds is certainly going to help as well. So yeah, that's kind of the Chaos Spawn in there as well. It doesn't have Death to the False Emperor, which I didn't realise, but that kind of makes sense. It does, however, have Mark of Chaos and Legion rule, which is kind of interesting as well. So yeah, how am I going to suggest loadout and sort of roles for the Chaos Spawn? Now, this is probably my longest segment in this one to talk about just what I think of them. So the Chaos Spawn is a simple unit in terms of loadout. It only comes with the hideous mutations, which overall not bad. Strength user, so 5, -2 AP and 2 damage means it's going to be a fairly dangerous unit to multi-wound Troop types, things like Primaris Marines and similar things that are a bit well armoured, have 2 wounds, are going to die pretty well to them. However, they do have D6 attacks, which is a tricky one. There's going to be some days you're going to get 6, hooray, and there's going to be other days you get 1, not so good. On average, they're going to get 3 attacks, because that's average, which is again okay, but you are only weapon skill 4. It does make it sort of not very reliable in that one. I think that means you're only going to connect with 1.5 attacks with each Chaos Spawn you throw in. Where its strength lies is in its combat abilities, of course. Fearsome will bring morale down 1, which is meh. You know, morale is kind of tricky in this edition. Mutated Beyond Reason is interesting. In previous editions it proved to be quite fun. And this one is kind of okay in a lot of sense. I'm generally not a fan of random stuff, and the spawn being random amount of attacks and random special ability makes it a rather unreliable little unit. Still, the possibility of -4 is quite good. +2 attacks would sort of be my go-to, because extra attacks means more death. It means your minimum of 3 attacks if you roll a 1, and possibly 8 attacks per 1, which could be really good. I mean, can you imagine you rolled 6, you know, took you to 5 and got 5 6s? I mean, that's 40 attacks, which is pretty not bad. Finally, reroll wound is again very helpful, and most fights it's going to do well for itself, but mainly if you're against tougher opponents. So what I'd say there, generally there's a lot of potential with Chaos Spawns, but I feel, you know, it could have done with a little bit more help. Say if you had a stratagem, then that would allow them to either, you know, sort of choose the ability they get and get 6 attacks automatically, would make them fantastic. You know, 6 attacks automatically, choose an ability. I'd probably say it has to be at least 2 command points, would make them certainly a lot more viable option, and maybe a little bit too dangerous doing that. But that's, you know, sort of my opinion. Maybe a stratagem that allowed them to, you know, benefit from all 3 mutated beyond reason would be also beneficial. Basically, there was potential with these guys, but, you know, I think you just need stratagems to get them there. But maybe I'm speaking in the wrong term here. You know, this is things I thought could help them, which is maybe a bit unfair. So I'm going to talk about ways I would use them as they are in the Codex. So how I'd use these guys, honestly, is depending on what opponent you're facing. If your opponent favours combat, say Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Tyrannids, Demons, etc., then these guys can act as cheap but dangerous screen that your opponent may want to drop in and try and mess with these guys, which, you know you're planning to, you know, if they're planning to sort of get in, they have to deal with your screen. These are quite a tough unit that'd be hard to get through. If they fail to get through, then the attacks back may be devastating. These guys after all are toughness 5, 4 wounds, and as I mentioned, Thunderhammers need to connect twice to kill even 1, which is more helpful than you think. And after spawns just need to connect once and wound through a Terminator to kill it. So, you know, if they've got a Storm Shield, maybe not as useful. It does mean they're still getting a 3-up save, but still dropping a Terminator and holding them down even a turn is very, very handy. If you're facing a gun line, however, say Tower Astra Militarum, then I would say these guys are toast. They have no reliable way to get across the board, and your opponent is not going to let them get across the board without being punished. Especially if they are in a big unit, because if you make it across the town, mess up with them, you can possibly hold down anything that's not got the keyword fly. You know, basically, if your opponent is town lets these guys get across the field, what are you doing? You know, don't let these guys go. They'll honestly be a pain if they get near you. So toughness 5 is not bad, but a 5-up save should be for the power fire that's suited to kill them. Deal with them fairly efficiently. Having them in a single unit on their own, so one Chaos Spawn, is okay, but pretty much begging your opponent to get first blood if you take them in units of 1. Nice harassment, but just say have the victory point. Bigger is kind of what I think is better in this one, but again, concentrated fire will absolutely destroy them. So yeah, next up, usually I talk about Legion traits, but hey, you know, so spawns, they don't get them. They don't have infantry, they don't have bike, they don't have demon prince, and they don't have, you know, the dreadnought hellbrute rule. So no Legion traits for spawns, and I still find it very unusual that marines and custodies and things like that don't get, you know, Legion traits that benefit everything, but just about every army does. I still find that really odd. What I usually do when it's a unit that isn't affected by Legion traits, I quickly mention, and it does have the Legion rule, I quickly mention when these units don't get the traits and what ones I think would benefit them. So just quickly mention that. Renegade chapters, being able to advance and charge is solid. You know, these guys will either advance or charge, they'll never shoot, so being able to do both is great. Butcher's Nail, an extra attack is okay, but that one time we get 9 attacks for that spawn is going to be delightful. Terror Tactics, -2 in combat with these large bases is good. Flawless Perfection is surprisingly good because you can work as a good screen unit against your opponent charging you. So if you get to dictate how things work in the fight phase, if you get multi-charged, can be pretty good and may bring some of the Chaos Spawn to attack back and really weaken your opponent. And Alpha Legion, Hidden Plain Sight, will buy you some turns as you move up the field, because you'll be -1 to hit, which is kind of handy. So it means you will get there. Still helps them survive. Unfortunately, none of these apply. But it would be quite nice if they could. Psychic abilities. So spawns for the most part do benefit quite a wee bit from psychic abilities. Maybe not hugely, but the key ones for them is survival spells granted by being affiliated to a Chaos God. As I mentioned, survivability is sort of a weakness to these guys. You may be toughness 5, but only 5+ save. So helping them survive is essential, and there's a few ways to do that. So first one is Prescience. Warp Charge 7, if manifested, select a Heretic Stash unit within 18 inches. Yeah, you are a Heretic Stash unit. Oh, I was just checking. You know, and you can add 1 to hit rolls for that unit until the start of your next psychic phase. This is a big boost for Chaos Spawns if they are at full, you know, capabilities. You know, there's 5 of them going across the board. A good roll for the amount of attacks and mutated beyond reason could see them hit 66% of attacks, I think, if math's right, instead of 50% of attacks. So yeah, helpful if your dice rolls go well, etc. Bigger units make this a viable option. Smaller units, I would personally pass. Next up is Miasma of Pestilence. Warp Charge 6, if manifested, select a visible Nurgle Heretic Status unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. Until the start of your next psychic phase, your opponent must subtract 1 from all hit rolls that target unit. So this will be useful because it would deter Plasma heavily from targeting these guys, which Plasma kinda probably wants to do. It will also benefit them in combat as well. Generally pretty good. There is 1 or 2 units that benefit from this hugely, but I'll go into that a little bit later in another tactical talk. There is one that I think absolutely loves Miasma of Pestilence, but equally Chaos Spawn can be quite good for it as well. Delightful Agonies, Warp Charge 6, Mark of Slaanesh only. If manifested, select a visible Slaanesh Heretic Stash unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. Until the start of your next psychic phase, roll a d6 each time model in the unit loses a wound. On a 5+, it does not lose that wound. Yeah, so yeah, on a 5+, you don't lose a wound. Simply put, these guys need to survive and being able to ignore wounds that can help them keep going across the field. Will it be better than the -1 caused by Miasma? Probably, but both are really good options. Basically to help cover these guys' weakness. Stratagems. Oh boy. This is gonna be the first time in all my tactical talks, I think, where I'm gonna say, except for one other unit, I think I said, but this is gonna be one of the first times I'm gonna say nap. None. I can't really see any. Most stratagems have a unit in mind, or they specifically affect them, or they target infantry or bikers or vehicles. None of them really affect beasts, which these are. So that's not helpful. As I mentioned previously, there are potential for stratagems that would really help Chaos Spawns become something a little bit more feared. You know, so you can use your command dice to re-roll one dice, so you can determine the random amount of attacks for one of the spawns or the mutated beyond reason. So you have that reroll one. So I feel a cheap stratagem that targets spawns, that allows them to either benefit from all their mutated beyond reasons, or maybe allows stratagem that allows you to re-roll the amount of attacks they get, something like that. Basically a stratagem to make them more reliable. Just one, I don't really care which one it is, would be a lot better. Part of me would really ask it to be the sort of re-roll the dice that determines the amount of attacks in the unit. I think that would probably be the best one. But generally I just think there was a missed opportunity to have one stratagem for Chaos Spawns that would have really helped them. But for the part of the stratagems we've got, I can't see any, can't find any. Let me know what you think. So yeah, that's my finish up on the Chaos Spawn. Look, they're cheap, they're a harassment unit, they've got big bases, they might help out in some ways. I don't use them very much, they tend to get absolutely obliterated for first kill, first blood, absolutely immediately. But maybe if you took them a unit of 5, your opponent might be, they're not that scary, and then they get swamped by them and be like, well, that's a pain. But I just feel they're a unit that can be too easily dealt with and have very low mobility options that make them a little bit more difficult. However, I'm very intrigued to hear your thoughts on the Chaos Spawn. Well, yeah, so thanks again, folks, for checking us out. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe, and check us out on social media and Patreon to see sort of the projects and armies we are working on at the moment. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you on another Tabletop Salt Battle Report.